Hey guys, Bizarro Pat here. Gonna give my review for Season 10, Episode 2, S.H.I.E.L.D. Okay, so the main plot of S.H.I.E.L.D. is that Clark gets a new partner at the Daily Planet since Lois has taken up the job in Africa, and her name's Cat Grant, who comic fans will be familiar with, although she's much different than she is in the comics. She's not as flirty with men, she's much more cutesy, has pink stuff everywhere, bakes cookies, but she also has this side of her that's very protective of her son Adam. So, while Clark has to deal with her being his new partner, they're targeted by an assassin named Deadshot, who comic fans will also be familiar with. And throughout the episode, they're trying to figure out why this guy's coming after Kat, but then they discover that he's really coming after Clark. Meanwhile, Lois is in Egypt, doing her job, when Carter Hall, Hawkman, shows up and decides to keep an eye on her after Clark has asked him to. And we learn a lot more about his origins, his past lives with his wife, and it's good symmetry between his wife and him, and Lois and Clark. And there's a subplot also going on where Oliver's still trying to figure out what happened to Chloe, and he eventually finds the man who tortured him last episode, Rick Flag, who reveals what happened to Chloe. And Oliver and Clark realize that it's time for them to start stepping into the light a bit more and earn the trust of the public. Okay, so on to the review. Things I really liked about this episode. I actually liked Cat Grant. I know a lot of people found her extremely annoying, but she was supposed to be. She was a comic relief character who, everything she said, you were supposed to kind of roll your eyes and go, what's she doing here? But I thought she was great. The actress did a pretty good job, and I really liked her interactions with Clark. I thought it was a nice change of the Clark and Lois dynamic with Clark and Kat. I also really liked Smallville's take on Deadshot. I wasn't sure what to expect when I heard he was going to be on the show, if he was going to be wearing his suit from the comics or what, but they took his gunslinging self from the comics and kind of boosted it even more to the point where he was kind of this modern cowboy type guy. But I thought it was a really interesting take on him. It was definitely different. But it was a cool enough spin on the character, I thought. I also really enjoyed the introduction of the Suicide Squad at the very end. We saw that Rick Flag, the man who tortured Oliver in the premiere, and he was also in this episode. We saw that he's put together a team that includes himself, Plastique, you may remember from Season 8, and now Deadshot, to mark the Justice League members so they can track them. And I thought it was a very strong introduction. It's set up pretty well for future appearances, and from what I've heard, they're going to be reoccurring villains on the show this season. I loved how Carter Hall was used this episode. We got to see a different side of him because in Absolute Justice, when we saw him last year, and also in Salvation, he had a brief scene. He was just portrayed as this really gruff, angry man who just was bitter at the world and just seemed like he wanted to end so he could be with his wife again. But back then we also saw a teeny bit of the sorrow he felt over his wife and the sympathy. And this episode really brought that to the forefront, and we got to see just how much he loved his wife. And he also saw a vision of her, and he says that once he starts seeing visions of her, it means he's close to being with her again. So it seems like he's foreshadowing that Hawkman may die later this season. But I really liked all the scenes with Lois. I thought they played well off of each other, the Erica Durance and Michael Shanks. Clark also got a new look in this episode. He realized that the public really distrusts some of the heroes because of them hiding in the shadows and not really showing themselves. There's just a level of distrust there. So Clark realizes he's got to step into the light and out of the shadows a bit more to be kind of the all-American hero that people really want. And so he gets this new look, which is a blue shirt with this red leather jacket with the House of L S symbol embedded in the jacket itself, which I'm guessing Oliver had someone make for him. And it was a really cool look. I liked the black outfit last season with the trench coat and the silver S, but I thought it worked well for last season with where Clark was, but I think it was its time to go. It served its purpose. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to seeing more of this outfit in action. On any problems with this episode I had? It did suffer a little bit from the post-big episode syndrome. The premiere had so many big moments that this kind of seemed a bit minuscule in comparison at points. It was more focused on character development, which is great, instead of big action pieces. So scale-wise, it seemed a bit small, which is fine, but it usually happens with episodes that are after a huge event, like a premiere. So I can't really complain too much about that. While I did like Cat Grant a lot, I do think she had a bit too much focus in this episode, but it wasn't like the whole episode was focused around her. It was just I felt like she was there a little too much, a few too many scenes for my taste. But I did like her, so not too bad. Overall, this was a really solid episode of Smallville. And it had a lot of good character development, and I loved all the scenes between both Clark and Kat and Lois and Carter. So I'm gonna have to give this episode a 9 out of 10. It didn't blow me away, but it was a good episode of Smallville, and I was really happy with it. So yeah, a 9 out of 10. Next review we got episode 3 Supergirl, so see you then.